This episode brought to you by Cafe Imports, Minneapolis-based importers of fine specialty green coffees. Independently owned and operated since 1993, Cafe Imports has been dedicated to decreasing its impact on the earth through renewable energy, carbon neutrality, and by supporting conservational efforts in places where quality coffee is grown and also where quality coffee is consumed. Where does your coffee come from? Welcome to the Lake Superior Podcast. I'm Walt Lindelof.
And I'm Frida Wara. We are made stronger by story, and there's no better source than the continent's largest body of fresh water, Lake Superior.
So join us as we highlight the 5 national parks that ring this greatest of the Great Lakes, meet the people, tour the places, and learn about the projects that make these parks and body of water so remarkable.
This podcast made possible with the support of the National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation and Media Brew Communications.
I'm Walt Lindelof.
And I'm Frida Wara.
And here we are once again for another episode of the Lake Superior Podcast. Today, something really cool coming up. Literally.
Cold is cool and ice is nice.
Mm-hmm.
But what's really special, Walt, is many of our parks that we just love to share with our listeners, but they shut down in the winter. So we can't get to Isle Royale unless we're on their winter study.
Sure.
We really probably can't get much around Grand Portage or even the Apostles. When the ice makes, we can get out and do a little bit of ice climbing around the Apostles. But we have Pictured Rocks, which is just coming into its glory.
Mm-hmm.
The winter season is spectacular. And one of the people that has truly shown me how beautiful the shoreline of Pictured Rocks. He was the first to take me kayaking at Pictured Rocks and the first person I ever watched ice climb. And that's Bill Thompson.
Yep, Bill Thompson joins us now. He is a Michigan Ice Fest organizer and climber. And hello, Bill. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me, Walt and Frida.
We're happy to have you on today to talk about something that I know is really important to you. And we'll give everybody kind of the details of what goes on with the Ice Fest. But we wanted to ask you first out of the chute, when did you start and decide to do ice climbing?
Well, I started back in 1991. A couple of professors at Northern Michigan University took myself and a friend of mine out ice climbing, and it was kind of a love at first try. And that was my first experience out at the Eben Ice Caves, and that was when that place was not very popular at all. And just fell in love with the climbing and got immersed into that culture, and still doing it all these years later.
Now, this created something, the Michigan Ice Fest, and we'll talk about what made you do that, but tell us what the Ice Fest is. Where do you do it? When do you usually do it? And then we'll talk about how you made it all happen.
Well, it's an interesting story, and I'm going to take you right back to that 1991. As soon as my climbing partner and I fell in love with this sport, we kind of searched out what was happening, where you could do it. And there was this little ice festival over in Munising, and it was started by a gentleman down in Kalamazoo, Michigan. His name was Mark Raish, and he started the event. And in 1991, we walked into this little restaurant and bar where the festival was happening, and there were 10 ice climbers, and we couldn't believe it. And that's kind of how it started. And so back then it was you go out and climb, and then you meet back at the restaurant and tell all the stories of the day. And that went on for several years until about 1995. And Mark decided that he was more involved with his family and didn't want to do the festival anymore. And that's when I approached him and said, would you be interested in having me take it over? And that's kind of how I got involved with the event.
So I'm guessing that restaurant was Sydney's.
Yeah, well, back in the day, it was called Ziegert's.
Oh,
Yes.
That's right. Yes. So that's a great one. For those folks that know where Munising, Michigan is, you're basically directly north of Chicago. And that restaurant now has had a couple change of hands, but still, Munising is the place to come for Michigan Ice Fest, and it has been for all these 30 years. This celebration, is this the oldest ice fest in the country?
We are the oldest ice fest in the country, and it's wonderful in that Mark left a lot of his documentation for us. He had a Great Lakes newsletter, ice climbing newsletter, that it was Xeroxed off. It was all in his own handwriting, and I have all that documentation. And so I have the official Ice Fest poster, which is amazing. And like I said, back then it was only 10 people, and now over the years we've grown it to the last time we did it before COVID, about 1,500 people. So.
Oh my goodness!
Wow, that's great. So how has it grown? I mean, why is it growing, and how does this rank, especially amongst those who do this?
Well, it's grown because ice climbing is a sport that you just don't walk into a store and buy the gear. Mm-hmm. You can get seriously hurt doing that. You really need someone to go out and, if you will, show you the ropes. And so that's what makes ice climbing festivals so valuable, where a person can come up to Munising with literally just their winter clothing and get professional instruction and learn the sport safely, and hopefully turn it into a passion, kind of like it did for me. And that's what these ice festivals around the country are all about. It's just really introducing people to this sport.
But what I also understand about your Ice Fest, Bill, is you are attracting. I mean, Conrad Anker has been here. There have been some of the most amazing climbers. They've got their eye on Munising as well. Why does it attract all ranges of ability?
Yeah, it's a pretty unique place. And so I always say that our festival is kind of like going to a basketball camp and having Michael Jordan, LeBron James, and Steph Curry as your instructors. And that's kind of what our festival is. And I think the reason that we have success drawing these professional athletes is the lakeshore is special. There's nowhere in the country that you can climb ice like what we have. And so, out in Colorado, Montana, Wyoming, they have wonderful ice formations out there. But nowhere in the world do you have ice that drops 200 feet off a sandstone cliff into the greatest freshwater lake in the world. And now you add in, a whiteout storm, and you have 20-foot waves crashing the cliffs below your feet. And it's very, very exciting. And that's kind of what these professional athletes come for. So they'll spend quite a few days doing instruction for us, but then we give them a couple days off so that they can go and explore on their own. And they always come back super excited, and they go out and tell friends. And that's kind of how our whole festival grows, is just that word of mouth, social media, and just the amazing scenery and places that you can climb at Pictured Rocks.
We are talking with Bill Thompson today on the Lake Superior podcast. He is the Michigan Ice Fest organizer, one of the climbers, talking about it as it happens on the Lake Superior shoreline, Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore, Munising, all of that. Bill, for someone like me who's never done it, this is not anything that is even really anything that's ever crossed my mind, because it seems like such a daunting thing to do. What about someone that comes to this that has never climbed, but maybe has an interest or at least wants to come and check it out?
Yeah, that's a great question. And most people that you say ice climbing, they go, "Well, there's no way I can do it. I'm not strong enough to do it." And really, that's kind of what we're there for, is to give you the tools to have success. And so when I talk about this amazing shoreline and waves crashing at your feet, we obviously don't put first-time climbers in that situation. Sure. We utilize a smaller formations and give you the professional instruction to give you a success. And if you have strong legs, like most people, then you use those techniques to ascend the ice and you have success. Mm-hmm. And so we have everyone, and at our ice festival, I would say about 80% of our participants have never climbed before.
Oh, really? Okay.
And it's everyone is kind of in the same boat. They're there to learn. And then we have people from age 8 to about 75 that actually participate. So it's not a young person and not a fit person sport. It's a sport, a lifetime sport for everyone. And so you just need the opportunity to be able to learn. And that's, once again, what our festival is all about.
And you have to be comfortable with cold, right? I mean, that's probably a prerequisite.
You'd be surprised. Some of our best festivals are when we have what I think is great weather. And great weather is whiteout, snowstorm. It might be cold. And we have people from all over this country and many other countries that come to the festival, and they'll come in the morning and for their class, and they'll have big wide eyes, and they go, well, are we canceling class? And we're like, no, it's an ice climbing festival. We're going. And they go out, and Frida, you've spent so much time in the winter up here. You get into the woods. It's not as windy. It's not as cold. The snow is beautiful. You give them this experience with a professional athlete. They come back to our headquarters, and they are so stoked. They're so excited that they went out and experienced something that they would never do. They would never go out in that type of weather. They'd never do anything like ice climbing. And so this event has such high energy because of that. So I like it. I like the weather to be a little spicy when everybody's up here because nobody ever talks about the festival where it was 40 degrees and cloudy. Right. But they talk, you remember the year that it snowed 30 inches every day of Ice Fest? And those are the ones they all remember. So I like those years the best.
Bill, I have a question for you in terms of those kinds of reactions from people when they do this and they experience this and they've maybe never been here. What's their reaction when they get that close and along Lake Superior, when they're actually along that big body of water? What do you hear from them?
Well, we hear and see their photos of what an amazing time they have had. And the one thing that we always say, our festival is like a big family reunion. And so when they get back to headquarters and they're just shaking with excitement, we see them year after year after year. And that's kind of, for me, that's why I do what I do is I can get together with 1,500 of my family members every year and experience something that's truly unique in an area that is like no other area in the world. And it's just contagious. And so that's the great thing about our event. And like I said, just developing these friendships over the years.
And Munising is really becoming such a mecca for our Midwest ice climbers. And one of the things, because Bill, I've got my daughter Erica, my son-in-law Jake, who are ice climbers from Colorado and Montana, and they come back to this area. And they shared with me, Jake shared that there are so many routes. When you go to climb in some of the other places, whether it's Ouray or Bozeman, you have fabulous routes, but there might not be the number. And still, I think chatting with you, there's still some routes that haven't even been discovered yet, because basically it's how the ice is going to that'll make those routes. So there's so much ice here. And so we've been talking about Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore, which is 44 miles long and about half of it is ice. And that's a lot of ice. But now you put in Grand Island just offshore, and how many professional ice climbers have actually climbed on an island in the middle of Lake Superior? They haven't. And so you have that island, and half of that island is ice. And so, and you don't always get to climb on Grand Island. So when the lake ice forms and you're able to travel over there, it's pretty darn special. And it's just, there's endless ice. So you're right in that there are some prime lines that just haven't been climbed, because you couldn't live long enough to climb every piece of ice at Pictured Rocks or Grand Island. So that, once again, I keep saying this is a unique experience, a unique place. And because of Pictured Rocks and the sandstone there, and same with Grand Island, that's what
attracts all these climbers to the area.
We're talking with Bill Thompson today on our Lake Superior podcast, Michigan Ice Fest organizer and climber. Now, Bill, you're talking to Frida, who has an understanding of it, and kids that are doing it and all of that. You do it. I've never done anything like this. In fact, growing up in the UP and growing up in the Copper Country, I had this sort of aversion to ice. I like to get out on the ice on the lake and things like that. But let's look at me as a first-timer. Is this, I mean, in terms of preparing me, someone like me, questions must come up. Is this cold? Is it wet? Is it dangerous? I mean, is this expensive? What do you need? I mean, take me and just get me ready for this.
Well, I would say it can be all of the above of what you just listed. It can be cold, but it can be warm. We have an ice climbing season that starts in November, so we've had climbers, myself included, that have been out already this year, and we can climb into May. So while you can be mowing your lawn in Marquette, but we can be ice climbing still in Munising in May, and there's nowhere in the lower 48 that you can do that. And so it can be all different temperatures, but it can also be something that a person that's never tried it before, that has lived up here all your life, it is so addicting. And I think one of the really special things for me are the sounds. And so the sounds are, you use an ice axe and you use crampons on your feet. And when you swing into the ice or kick into the ice, it makes a particular sound. And so the first time I go out each season, it's just like so special because I've missed those sounds, for 4 or 5, 6 months. And now I can hear that again. But then the water is always running behind the ice. It can be 30 below. You'll still hear the water running behind the ice. So you can hear this. And now, first time climbing, we get you 20 feet off the ground. You're somewhere that most people in this country have never been before. And so you can look at the ice, and it has all these different formations and ice crystals, and it's a fascinating place. And that's what we try to tell people, is to kind of lose that fear, because honestly, everyone that tries ice climbing is afraid. That is what happens.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So I have a friend that would say that everyone has their butterflies in their stomach, right? And so what your job is to make those butterflies fly in formation. And once you get them to fly in formation, you can concentrate on technique. And once you start getting the technique down, now you can forget about that, and you can kind of really enjoy the area that you are playing in, which is on the ice, and start to notice all these, you climb up and there'll be a little window of ice that's totally clear. It looks like a window that you can see through, and you can see the waterfall actually flowing behind that ice sheet. And it's just, to me, it's just magical to go into those places, and I like introducing people to those places.
It is just fun talking to you about this, Bill, because it's really coming across how much you enjoy this, and your own personal experience. This became really something that you've turned into the Michigan Ice Fest and what it's become. Equipment that's needed. I mean, you mentioned a few things there, but what are some of the key things? What's the key equipment? I'm sure that it can get increasingly expensive, but for a beginner even, you can probably get this stuff together pretty well.
Yeah, initially people go, wow, that's expensive. Initially it can be, but I look at it as, for about a $1,500 investment, you have a lifetime of fun. And so the equipment really doesn't, some of the boots that I'm wearing, I have worn since 1991. They just don't wear out.
Right, yeah.
And so for $1,500, I think it's a relatively inexpensive sport. A snowmobile these days is $3,000, and you have to put gas into that, and you have to do repairs on that. And so the ice climbing gear, it's an initial investment, but it will last you a lifetime, particularly if you take care of it. So we have specialized boots, and the specialized boots are stiff mountain boots, and they are warm. And so by being stiff, we can attach what's called a crampon. and that's what gives you purchase into the ice and traction so you don't slip. You need a climbing harness, and there's nothing special about an ice climbing harness. It's just like the rock climbing harnesses. You need 2 ice axes, and those are what you swing and hold on to that sticks in the ice. And then you need a helmet and then climbing rope, and you're pretty much set to go and start climbing. So it's kind of the equipment in a nutshell of what you need.
And Bill, you need to have a buddy, right?
Well, yes. I mean, ice climbing or rock climbing is a very social activity, and so that's how you forge special partnerships. And so some of my most memorable experiences in life have been with my climbing partners. And that gentleman that I mentioned back in 1991, my friend, he's a college roommate, he's my best friend. He's my climbing partner. He's also my business partner, Arnie Ronis. And so we still climb together. He was the original person with me going to that festival in 1991, and he has been to everyone that we've been to all of them. And so that's what's special about climbing. And you can climb by yourself, but it's really not recommended. And I think that's not as fun as sharing that experience with somebody else.
Talking with Bill Thompson on the podcast here today. He's the Michigan Ice Fest organizer and climber. It's in Munising. It's along the Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore, along the Lake Superior shoreline. Bill, you've described very passionately your experience of getting involved in this and why you do this and what it is you like about it. Tell Frida and me what it's like to ice climb the Pictured Rocks, the National Lakeshore there, those particular areas. What is that like to do that?
Well, it's honestly, it's not like anywhere else in this world. It's I enjoy Pictured Rocks is a little bit different than most other areas. Most other areas in the country, you start at the bottom, you walk up to the bottom of the climb, and you climb. Pictured Rocks is just the opposite. So our hiking trail runs along the top of the cliff. And so now you rappel into and down towards the water and climb out. And it's just a surreal experience, and it's almost like you're on a different planet, particularly when Lake Superior freezes over. And as far as you can see, there's ice. There's nothing but lake ice. And so you drop over the cliff. Your partner is at the top. You are by yourself, and it feels like you're on a different planet. And just to look around, you can see forever. There's nothing there. There's no land anywhere. It's just a white plain. And like I said before, if there's a storm and the wind is really blowing, it's an incredible experience. And so then you're just basically climbing out and concentrating on using good techniques so you can get out. It's very, very special. My hands are sweating right now because I want to go climbing.
That's Bill, absolutely. And Bill, where can we find out more about Michigan Ice Fest? And by the way, I know that website. That is also for our listeners who are tuning in, and you are so articulate and goose pimples that you're giving me, and it has nothing to do with temperature. The pictures that you are describing and these experiences are all over the website. And also go to Downwind Sports. Downwind Sports has operations. Arnie's store is in Houghton. Bill's store is on 3rd Street, Marquette. And they also have the Downwind Sports in Munising, which has the Ice Fest headquarters right there in downtown Munising. And that store has just opened in the last year. Isn't that true?
I think we're almost 2.5 years into it now.
Wow.
And so,
okay.
Time flies.
We all lost a year for COVID somewhere in there too. So, what is that?
Right.
What is that website, Bill, for folks? I mean, this I want to make sure people don't miss out on the opportunity to see more about what you do.
Yeah, it's MichiganIceFest.com, and they can go there and see all the photos, see all the athletes that are coming, see the type of classes that we do. We also have a guide service that Frida mentioned that we do guided. If you don't like crowds, we do a guide service that takes people out ice climbing starting right now through March until at least in March, maybe even April. And we'll take people out. And I do want to mention, Walt, too, that there is an opportunity to come and just watch the Ice Fest.
Okay.
And so folks that might be interested but may not want to commit to actually climbing can come during Ice Fest, and they go to our headquarters. We provide a free shuttle right to the climb. They can walk out and see the folks ice climbing and take pictures if they want. I kind of liken that as going to an ice cream bar and watching people eat ice cream. I don't know if I would like that as much, but we certainly are open to having people come on out. And, if they go, wow, that looks pretty cool, maybe I do want to try that. They can always join us anytime, obviously. So we'd love to see folks out there to kind of experience what we've been talking about today.
Bill, is there a cap on the number of participants you can have at Ice Fest?
There really isn't, Frida, and it kind of goes back to what you had mentioned before. There's so much ice that we can find places to climb, but what really regulates how many people show up is the lodging in Munising. Mm-hmm. Munising has a population of about 800 people, and I already mentioned the last time we did it, we had 1,500 people. And so we effectively double the population of Munising, and we fill up every hotel room there is. And mm-hmm. so we recommend that if people are coming up to visit us, that they get their lodging early, and that kind of regulates how many people that shortage of lodging will regulate how many people come to the fest.
Bill, this is a question I should know, but can you winter camp in Pictured Rocks?
You can. You can camp at Pictured Rocks. We and we do have people that do that. And there's also free camping at Bay Furnace Campground. I'm sure you've been there before. Mm-hmm. It's a National Forest Service right on Lake Superior. And they open that up to free winter camping. And that's a little closer to Munising. Mm-hmm. The camping that you do at Pictured Rocks takes a little bit to get back into the backcountry. Yeah. And folks that want to see the presentations in the evening, it's pretty hard for them to do that. But we certainly have folks that do go out there and really get the full-on experience by winter camping.
When do you usually have Ice Fest? When does it usually happen? I mean, probably weather can sometimes be a factor, and other things, but when is it usually held?
Yeah, it's usually held in February, the second weekend, third weekend, right around Valentine's Day. So this year, in 2022, it's February 9th through the 13th. And I love climbing history, and so our event was always in January. The first one in 1991 was in January. But over the years, what we've noticed is that the lake ice to get to Grand Island forms later and later each year. And so our Ice Fest has migrated from early January to mid-February. And so, we can talk about climate change, and we're seeing it firsthand just in our young 30 years of history of lake ice just not forming. And so we're kind of settled in that second to third weekend of February for our event.
I have to tell you, Walt, that the very first time I ever went sled dog camping, winter camping, mm-hmm. it was with Bill. And we went to Eckerman Trail. And so when we're talking to Bill Thompson about these activities, it's the real deal. It's the real deal.
Bill is the Michigan Ice Fest organizer. He's a climber. And as we wrap up with you, Bill, here today on the podcast, what else would you like the listeners to know about Michigan Ice Fest? Maybe your final thoughts on it.
Well, I think it's something that people should experience, and from one way or another. And I think there's something at the festival for everyone, whether you're a climber or not. And so we've talked a lot about why people come up, the spectacular climbing at Pictured Rocks, but we do these amazing presentations every year. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I highly encourage, once again, whether you're a climber or not, to kind of show up and attend those, because of the experiences with the people that are there. And so we do morning coffee talks at the Gallery Coffee Company, and you just show up, and we have amazing people that, Phil Henderson is doing the full circle Everest climb next May, which will be the first Black ascent of all Black member team ascending Everest. And he's going to be there. He's the expedition leader. And we'll be talking about that. And we have Mo Beck, who is an amputee, but an ice climber. So there's really no excuses for people not to try ice climbing, because Mo, she's doing it with one arm. And just an amazing athlete. And so you have those free coffee talks in the morning. We do book signings in the afternoon, and then we do evening presentations. And we have, like I said, this is our 30th anniversary, so we feel we've gone all out. We have really the hot shot climbers that everybody's reading in the magazines about, like Will Gadd, who is arguably one of the best ice climbers in the world. He's coming to do a Friday night presentation. But we also have people like Jim Danini, who is a legend in our sport, and who's 75 years old, who is still ice climbing, still putting up first ascents down in Patagonia. And so this is an opportunity in Munising to see this presentation, but also to interact with them, because, like I said, Munising is a very small town, and these athletes, that's what they do for a living. They socialize with people and try to get them turned on to this activity. So we invite everyone to come out and enjoy the festival.
That website, one more time, with all this info, is what?
MichiganIceFest.com.
Bill, we appreciate it, man. That was really great.
You know what? I really am feeling right now, too. And, of course, when somebody comes up to me and says they hate winter and they hate cold and they hate snow, and I want to say, wow, I ache for you, because it is my season. And truly, as Bill was talking about, to be in the company of people that give you reason to celebrate this cold climate that we have here, and knowing that we have a location that is so spectacular. Truly, you love where you live. And even if you don't live here, you're listening to us from far away, we invite you to come to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And really, cold is cool and ice is nice.
Bill, thank you so much today, and best of luck with this year's upcoming festival. And we hope to have you back on sometime on the Lake Superior podcast.
Oh, thanks, Walt. Thanks, Frida. And I look forward to seeing both of you in Munising in February.
It's Bill Thompson. He is the Michigan Ice Fest organizer, one of the climbers. Frida, what passion in what he was just talking about, that just the way it came across. It's even got a guy like me who's never even thought about doing this. Doing it? Maybe. At least going and checking it out.
You bet. Well, that's, Bill in my life has been so important. Mm-hmm. First time ever to, as I mentioned, about sled dog camping and kayaking, Pictured Rocks, and all kinds of things that he's led me to, because he's that same person saying, come on, give it a try. Mm-hmm. They've got all the safety measures. It's not it's going to be scary, because that's anything we do that's different is going to be scary.
That's why you're doing this to a certain extent. You look at it and go, we're going up that? Okay. But that's what it's cool. And this is the whole thing about like the magic of Lake Superior. Big ideas come from big water. Right?
Yes,
and that's
absolutely.
Big water. And this has just been great having Bill on today talking about the Michigan Ice Fest planned for February of 2022. If you can make it, certainly do. We'll have all the information for you, too. That's linked up if you're checking out this podcast. But this
bring
was
the family.
Yeah.
If you say, well, I'm not sure about it, but get in the car, just come up February 9th through the 13th, come out. Head up to the headquarters. They'll guide you out there, shuttle you out there. And the reason you want to take that shuttle rather than your own car is that the road at Sandpoint Drive is really kind of sketchy. So just, let them take you out and guide you out. But let the kids experience something. So many times we tell our kids, you can't go outside.
Now you can.
Yeah.
And do something fun, especially on the shores of Lake Superior. That's going to do it for us this time around, wouldn't you say?
You betcha,
buddy. It was a lot of fun. I'm Walt Lindola.
I'm Frida Wara.
Thanks for listening to the Lake Superior podcast.
The National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation, NPLSF, is the only official nonprofit 501c3 fundraising partner of the National Park Service for all 5 U.S. National Park sites on Lake Superior.
To learn more about NPLSF projects and programs, you can visit the website at nplsf.org or friend them on Facebook.
I'm Frida Wara.
And I'm Walt Lindola. Thanks for listening to the Lake Superior Podcast.
This podcast made possible with the support of the National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation and Media Brew Communications.
This episode brought to you by Cafe Imports, Minneapolis-based importers of fine specialty green coffees. Independently owned and operated since 1993, Cafe Imports has been dedicated to decreasing its impact on the earth through renewable energy, carbon neutrality, and by supporting conservational efforts in places where quality coffee is grown and also where quality coffee is consumed. Where does your coffee come from?